Welcome to the Performance-Based Assessment Design Cohort Showcase. This is our second showcase in the last 2 years. We had our first last year around the same time with our first cohort of teachers that began designing performance-based assessments within our CBE schools. We're really excited to talk to you more about that and for you to get a chance to hear about their experiences and about the wonderful performance-based assessments that they've created. I'll pass it along to Heather to officially get us started, but really glad to see you all here and present for this gathering and this celebration.
Welcome on. Thank you, Damar. I'm Heather Penzak. I'm the Director of Innovation and Implementation here at EdSystems, who works closely with CPS on this opportunity here. My colleague, Dr. Ginger Reynolds, was really the driver of this work, but she's in fabulous Italy here at the moment. So I am here as her EdSystems representative, and I work closely with Ginger on all things CBE. I'll have Dr. Karen Hess say hello and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I've been working with Damar for a few years, but this is my first showcase.
Wonderful.
All right, Damar Smith, Chicago Public Schools, Senior Program Manager of Competency-Based Education.
Thanks, all. And so today, really the purpose of the meeting here is a celebration, right? We're going to be showcasing products, a performance-based assessment from a PD that was here recently, sharing innovation and learning. Damar, as they go into the welcome here, is really going to tee up some things that they want you to consider as you're hearing from all the different presenters, and also just to inspire you, right? So folks did a lot of work. They're going to share that work with you, but where you might be able to design your own assessments that really address those real world inequities that resonate with students. I'm going to let a couple of folks in here for a moment. And so what this is a part of, kind of a bigger thing here, is the Chicago Equity Centered Innovation Forum. This is a partnership that EdSystems works closely with CPS on. And really the goal of it, the focus, the mission is to support the implementation of innovative instructional models as strategies for dismantling systemic inequities in traditional educational approaches. And so that's a big thing to say, right? And so here today, you're going to learn about people who have been addressing that and doing really intentional work. And you'll see some real examples of that. And so excited for me personally to learn here and for you all to learn. And with that, I will turn it back over to Damar.
Okay, so we asked everybody to think through what was the most interesting work task or project you participated in the last year, right? So give that some thought if you haven't done so yet. And we want you to add that in the chat. So what did you learn by doing it? What made it meaningful for you? It doesn't have to be academic. It doesn't have to be related to performance-based assessment. If you're a part of the cohort, it's anything that you feel like you learned last year that kind of stuck with you and you want to share with the group. You can add it in the chat, and if anyone is really feeling really brave, you can come off mute and you could share as well.
I've already seen a couple of really interesting responses there.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to come off mute because I'm still driving home. But I have changed out many a light fixture in my place, and now I'm an electrician.
Wow.
Yeah, I did the first one on my porch and it worked on the first try. So I'm like, yeah, I got this. I've like hung chandeliers now. I'm good at it.
Okay. Didn't expect that.
Yes, impressive, impressive.
Marianne says she's learning about how to conduct research. Great.
I'm going to go ahead and take myself off mute and just share mine if that's okay.
Sure.
I worked with my diverse learner seniors and linked them with a transition service that helps them use their IEP in college. And it was really hard to do that. It was just really hard to find time during the school day, email all those teachers, all that. But I think that now I know how to do it. If I did it again, I could do it pretty well.
Great. And very important work too. Thank you.
All right, so I see some sewing classes, right? I also see some work that was done with Chicago Public Schools with Shanjanita. So that's exciting as well. Part of the Curriculum Equity Initiative.
Ah, yeah, important stuff. Wow.
Coaching the girls soccer team post-pandemic. Okay, William, that's exciting. Earned
I'm sorry.
honors program.
I'm just returning tomorrow, but I don't mind sharing.
Okay, great.
Sounds good.
I'm gonna call this a task. I'm relearning how to roller skate. And so what did I learn by doing it? Falling in my 40s is not the same as falling in my 20s.
It is not.
And it's meaningful to me. It's meaningful. It's good exercise. And I haven't lost as much as I thought I would. So
Good for you.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. Casey said, starting an earned honors program. Things crickle and crackle in your 40s and 50s. There's no lie about that. All right, so thank you all for sharing. I think as we think through the importance of performance-based assessment, a lot of it has to do with what you just said, right? Creating opportunities that are relevant, that allow for you, right? And your experiences, you talked about skills that you built that were meaningful, probably long lasting, meant something, resonated, were valuable to you. And we want to make sure that we're providing more of those experiences for our students. About 3.5 years ago, I got the opportunity to participate in a performance-based assessment micro-credentialing cohort that was very similar to the one that we have that you're going to hear from today. And in that process, I learned from Karen Hess, right? It was developed by ISB, by the State Board of Education. And this was through competency-based education. It was an opportunity for us to create these really rich performance-based assessment tasks for students to participate in. And through that, I learned a great deal and wanted to make sure that we brought that opportunity back to our teachers. Fortunately, I didn't have the ability at that particular time to offer it up to a number of different teachers within the CBE cohort at CPS. But now we do. And this is our second year of working directly with teachers, having them create performance-based assessments, launch them, roll them out in the classroom. Because this year was a little bit different and we started a little bit later than we did last year, what you're going to hear in terms of actual examples of performance-based assessments are going to be assessments that were created by teachers that they're going to roll out next year. And we're really excited about that. We're excited for them. They did a lot of hard work over a short period of time, right? And these activities, as Karen mentioned, these activities are not just academic in nature. They connect to transformative SEL and SEL. They're also about building these adaptive competencies. They're rich in nature. They're relevant for students. They connect them to their peers, connect them to adults as educators, as teachers, connect them to community as well, help them solve real world or address real world problems. That's exciting for us. That's exciting for them. Right? And so I'm wowed by the work that the teachers did. The 14 teachers that participated this year have done. And you're going to get a chance to hear the amazing work yourself. And so I won't spend a lot of time talking about why we got here or the value of it. We want you to think that through, though. We want you during this particular time to think through the value of what you're hearing, the impact of what you're hearing, and how it could possibly be applied. So let's go to the next slide. And I'll pass it on to Karen Hess.
So as Damar said, a couple years ago, we did a first group of schools. Actually, as a result of that work, I decided this book had to be written to support teachers. So all the teachers in this cohort received a copy of Deeper Competency-Based Learning, which I co-authored. And if we could go to the next slide, we used a lot of the tools from the book, co-led by Damar and I. And I will have to say, this would not be possible without someone on the inside who knows the culture of the school, who could reach out to teachers and support them and to work with me. I couldn't have come in as an outsider, and I don't think have gotten the same kind of results and learning that occurred. We had a lot of issues. We had COVID, we had school shutdowns. And so we ended up having really only 6 sessions with about a month or sometimes 5 weeks in between. And we focused on the theme of social justice in whatever way teachers felt it applied in their classrooms. We began with just looking at what's a rigorous competency in terms of adaptive, social, emotional competencies, as well as academic. We learned a lot from each other about social justice issues. There were a lot of tools from the book, and many of which they're posted on my website. And we made a lot of connections to what project-based learning also emphasizes. So all of their PBAs had an essential question. They thought about public products students would be sharing and how students would reflect on their learning. And we used some of the teachers who were in the earlier cohorts to give feedback to the teachers in this group so that they could fine tune and refine their work, because we feel that modeling real competency-based learning is a strength of a project like this. So it's not you hand it in and you're done. You hand it in and you find out how to make it better. And I'll turn it back to you, Damar.
Okay, so we're going to start this showcase. Really excited to get it underway. Just to give you some grounding in terms of what the showcase is going to entail. Teachers will speak for about 3 to 5 minutes at the most about what their performance task is essentially about, what they're hoping for students to engage in, right? And then also what they got out of this experience. Not just what they got out of the experience in terms of creating a performance task, but what was really strong about their performance task, what they felt was strong about their performance task, the strength of it, and then also the performance task itself you'll hear about as well. Also, while we're going through this process, we want you to think through what pleasantly surprised you, what did you learn, what inspired you, what value did you find in hearing from these particular teachers and the projects that they created? And how could you apply that to your particular work? Now, these are all high school teachers, right? And so they're speaking from a 9 to 12th grade lens for the most part. And you'll hear them tell you a little bit more about what this experience meant to them, how their students will benefit from their particular performance tasks that they're going to roll out. And as I said, just kind of keep those prompts in mind as you're hearing their stories and as you're hearing their performance tasks. All right, so we can go to the next slide. So our first presenter is Cherise Lake. Cherise is she's representing York, and she's going to tell you about her performance task. I'll pass it along to her. You know what? Cherise might not be present.
Oh, she might not be on yet.
She might not be on yet.
So maybe
we can go to the next person, but I will say that the certificates that you see here, right, there are 3 different icons. One is for continuous learning, one is represents the whole child, and one represents academic excellence, right? These are part of the 6 core values of CPS, right? And so we just wanted to make sure that we highlighted the fact that this particular work does connect to those particular core values. So I'm going to think through, because of the fact that we probably have some people here. William is the next person. He is literally on, he's actually with us right now. So William can jump in if he doesn't mind. William is representing Curie.
Yeah, hi. Sorry. Can you see me okay? Hello? All right. So do you have are you going to show the slide that we made?
Yeah, there
Okay.
you go.
I'm not going to read through all that. You guys can read it. You guys are adults. I don't like treating adults like kids. So you guys can go ahead and take a look at it when you have a chance. But overall, like I teach physics, and in physics we talk a lot about motion and people moving, and sometimes I feel like even though it's a very concrete topic, it feels abstract to kids because we're talking about people moving and how people move and things like that, but it doesn't feel grounded in something that's real. And so what I really liked about the PBA cohort in general was that it really pushed me to think about how to think about content that's accessible to and relevant to my students' lives. And some of the, with all the things that we talk about with people moving and how people move, one thing I thought about was just like athletic performance and athletic competition and physical fitness, and kind of how that seems like such a kind of very innocent, fun activity that people do, but then there's a lot of societal implications that are very, very real consequences for some people. So in my task, what I'm asking students to do is essentially think about some of these issues that that are surrounded, or some of these issues in our society that revolve around athletic performance or physical competition. So things that they maybe haven't thought about before, like race, cost of athletics, gender, and what that means in terms of competition, accessibility to these things. Just asking them to think about these things. And then having them think about how some of the things we've talked about relate to these, but then also investigating some of the more prevalent issues and opinions on these issues, and kind of either using data and research to either debunk it or to explain kind of the information that people put out to you. And from there, really working together with their peers. So the adaptive competencies of this PBA have to deal with collaboration. So, with this being such a sensitive topic, I think that it's very important that they learn how to navigate these issues along with other people. And I think that's where the collaboration piece comes into effect. So ultimately, the final product looks like, what the final product looks like is a presentation of their choice of the issue, of the 2 or more most prevalent ideas in that issue, and then them presenting research and data that either support those issues, and kind of giving the audience a chance to think about their new understanding of it, and as well as presenting kind of the presenters more informed and understanding of the issue. So yeah, I think that's basically my project. Yeah, I don't know if that was enough, but yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions.
That is completely enough. Thank you, William. Appreciate it. Loves Williams' performance task. I feel like it definitely brought in all the elements of academic competencies and adaptive competencies, and was cross content, right? So there was some math, some physics, ELA as well in the task.
And I would just add that a lot of times people think social justice doesn't have any connection to the content you're teaching. I think William did a nice job of making those connections.
Thanks.
Definitely. So as you're listening, right, William was the first person to go, right? What did you feel like you learned? What surprised you? What was valuable? Those types of things, keep that in mind. We'll go on to the next performance task from Southside, Latoya and Elizabeth. Elizabeth will share the task. I know Latoya wasn't able to make the meeting today, but I'll pass it along to Elizabeth so she could.
Hi, everyone. Like Damar said, Latoya couldn't make it today, but she's like more than half. She really was the brainchild behind all of this. So I got to give her credit, even though she can't take it herself. So we work at Southside Occupational, which is a special ed high school for 18 to 22-year-olds. So thinking of like social justice and PBA and trying to mesh all of it together, it made my brain hurt a little bit, but we worked it out and we were good to go. So in terms of social justice, an issue that we found very relatable for our students was advocacy. Once our students age out at 22, there isn't a lot of services that they can get themselves into independently. So for us, our goal was to give them a piece of advocacy that they could take with them and, you know, be the person that speaks up for themselves. So then, you know, narrowing down our thought process, once we had advocacy, we focused on bullying. Like I'm sure a lot of us see, students coming back from COVID is like a different kind of beast. In some sort of way, they've lost a sense of their like kindness. So we figured this would be a really good way to show them and kind of bring it back. So our PBA was on anti-bullying and how to speak up and be an advocate for yourself and others in situations of bullying. So we wanted to add an academic piece to it. And within COVID and all of this, our students really focused and heightened their computer skills. So in bullying, we've learned that students now know how to cyberbully, and that's not great either. So to incorporate academia in there, we did a presentation on cyberbullying after our presentation on bullying. And the end product was that students would make their own version of a PSA. It could be about anti-bullying, it could be about advocacy. It was really up to their choosing, and it could be any type of PSA. So we're really lucky our students have a performing arts class. So we're not going to be able to finish it this year, but we're kind of looking towards next year of having students create videos of public service announcements and letting them be their own directors of it. That's just one way we are thinking of it. And then we were also going to have any like print PSAs set up across the school. So it was just a reminder for everyone to be a little kinder than they always think. I think I covered everything in that, but if I didn't, just let me know.
I think you did. Thank you for sharing. Really, really appreciate you sharing this task. And please, if you're listening and you're really excited, you're amped up, you want to share anything in the chat, you don't have to wait until we get to, let's say, that time that we allot for people to be able to add things into the chat. You can do that in real time. So please feel free to add your thoughts in real time if you have anyone that you want to share. All right, so what pleasantly surprised you? What did you learn? What inspired you? What did you find value in, and how could you apply anything that you heard from Elizabeth or William to your work?
I'll unmute because again, I'm driving, but I love that. And I know Southside does the Southside News every morning. So I feel like having the PSAs incorporated with the news would be super cool. But I think that could go beyond like Southside, and that could happen everywhere. Like having the printed PSAs to remind people to be a little bit kinder with like, you know, a student's face on it, I think is a cool project and impactful.
Thanks, Mel. I think William, and just thinking now, working with the PBA, and it almost, I don't know about anyone else, I'm on year 6 of teaching, which I know isn't crazy long, but you kind of get in like a habit and a routine, and like, you know what works, and you don't really go outside of your realm if you don't need to. So I think the PBA really working on it showed me that like you can take a deeper dive and look at things in a different way. And it's not this like daunting, scary idea. Like you could actually get something good from it. So that was just a nice reminder for me.
It was definitely a little daunting and scary at the beginning, I will say. But then after we talked about it, it was less scary, less daunting.
Right, Marianne Pitcher said she's inspired by teachers striving to make learning relevant and meaningful for students during these challenging times. Right, feel free to add any additional thoughts that you have, whether you're a part of the cohort, whether you're not a part of the cohort. Definitely want to hear your thoughts about the two that were presented.
I was going to just jump in and say I was kind of a little pleasantly surprised by how little or small it could be to have an effect. It doesn't have to be like a big unit or a big project. It could be something kind of simple and small. So that was one thing that kind of made me feel a little better as we're working on.
Okay, all right. So we'll move to the next group of performance tasks.
And Damar, Sharice is here. I don't know if you want to go back or.
Sharice, are you feeling?
Hi, can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know what, this is new for me because I'm on my phone. So I'm sorry, I'm just jumping in. It's been kind of hard for me to log on, but I'm here now. What did you want me to do? Just to kind of give an overview of what I planned, or I'm not sure. I want to make sure that I'm doing what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, just, I mean, for you, it's just focusing on like what students will experience, the essential question, what you hope for them, you know, through this particular performance-based assessment, and what you gain from the process, from the experience yourself. So those two particular things, what you hope students will experience through the performance-based assessment that you created, and what was relevant and what you learned through the process.
Okay, so I guess what I'm hoping that will be the students' experience. I love the idea of authenticating their learning and just really having them to be a part of choosing what they're interested in. I think it's important to allow students to have voice. And so just to kind of give you a little bit of background about what I did without going too deep, I thought about a few essential questions. I'll just read a couple of them to you. One of the essential questions that I had is, why is it important for people to hear and read the perspectives of many different cultures? I thought that that was relevant because I want students to understand that their voices are valid, and that helps them to elevate their voice. Another question that I had was, why is it important for me to hear and read perspectives from my culture as well as others? So I want them to understand that what they have to offer is rich and relevant as well. And to just kind of give you an overview, the topic that we were exploring, or that I had designed, is just understanding power dynamics in both language and culture. And it's just to kind of read it briefly, it said often members are marginalized or other. And so what I want them to do is kind of look at a historical perspective of how their voices are considered second, just from a historical place, not just a particular culture, but many different cultures that are marginalized. And then we will start with an anchor text, which is Single Story by Chimamanda Adichie, and talking about how single stories influence how we react to others and how other people react to us. So I thought that that would give rich, relevant discussion. And I think that's probably where I'll stop at with that.
Thank you, Sharice. That was wonderful. That was wonderful. For Sharice as well, because she, you know, didn't get a chance to hear what you learned and what you loved, what inspired you, what was surprising. Please add that to the chat as well.
Okay, no worries.
No, thank you. Thank you. All right. So we'll wait for people to add their thoughts. While you're doing that, I will introduce Joelle Clark. Joelle represents Clemente.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Joelle. Can you share your performance task?
Yeah, for sure. Would you mind just going to the next slide? Thank you.
There.
I'm here working with Matt Cooch, and he's in this group too. So he's making me feel nervous right now because he's
Good
right.
going, Matt.
Okay, so my topic is technology of today and tomorrow. And originally I had created this unit during remote learning when students were, not face to face with each other and really using their technology to communicate everything, socially and academically. And it went really well, and a lot of students really enjoyed that unit. And so I thought that this would be the perfect time to adapt this to this PBA. And also I did not have a social justice link before. And so I feel like that helped me kind of center a new focus when I was creating this. So I actually found some really cool articles that had to do with how technology affected social justice and impacted social justice positively and negatively during the pandemic. And I think that's pretty relevant still today. So that was included in my unit. But ultimately, the students will be using their prior knowledge and their experiences, as well as the sources that they will be working through to answer the question, should there be a limit to technological innovation? And if so, what's the limit? And if not, why not? So throughout the unit, the students were working through discussion and self-reflection. And so the biggest thing for this unit was self-assessment. And I had created this rubric where students, throughout the unit, there's different discussions. And each time we do a discussion, the students then go to their assessment rubric and rate themselves using the different IB skills and IB standards. And that just really helped students see visually where they were at and how they progressed throughout the unit, which I thought was really awesome. And then at the end of the unit, the summative tasks has the students create an innovation of their own that they think would benefit society. But they also have to recognize the ethics of that. So we talk a lot about ethics throughout the unit as well, and how that plays a role in how it affects life and that kind of thing. So the final product was a Shark Tank presentation. So I don't know if many of you have seen Shark Tank, but some of the students had seen it and some of the students hadn't. So I had to kind of show them what that looked like, but they were really excited about it and created a final task that was a brochure. Something that I noticed as I was redoing this and something someone suggested to me, is using a choice board, which I think would be really awesome at the end, instead of just telling them you can only create a brochure, actually allowing them to use any kind of a presentation in order to show their innovation. And then the final product are just answering some of those questions. How will this technological innovation benefit people? Identify the ethics of the innovation. If there are negatives to this product, how will you convince people that the product is worth it? But yeah, I thought this was a really great experience, and to be able to kind of go back to an old unit that I had worked on and, modify that and make it better was really an awesome experience. And one thing that I think is a real strength in doing this kind of work is just keeping the students engaged and having them work on real life things. So things that they're facing, things they're going through. With the technology thing, a lot of them had a lot of prior experiences, a lot of things that they faced during the pandemic when they were completely remote, and all those kinds of things. So this is something that the students really were interested in and took ownership of. So I'm hoping that when I roll this out next year with all of these modifications, that it goes even better. That's pretty much everything.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So one of the things I just want to add specifically about Joelle's work and the fact that some teachers did come in with performance tasks that they wanted to tweak, right? Strengthen, enhance based on creating rubrics that are really solid, that, you know, that get away from maybe vague language, or really focusing on content area standards, or bringing in that social justice lens to make sure that students are more connected to the content. And so we wanted to make sure that this experience wasn't just about, okay, I have to create a new task. In some cases, teachers were creating new tasks. In some cases, they were creating or revising tasks that they had already built out, and bringing in that social justice lens and the adaptive competencies in a more intentional way. All right, so we can go to the next. Matt Cooch, right, from Clemente as well. Can you please share your performance task?
Yes, I can. Can I get the slide change, please? So one of the things, I'll just start by saying, one of the things that I felt proud of myself for was I've always struggled to connect math with real life things. It's like I was taught in such a different way to do like skill and drill. I feel like most of us were probably taught in that way. So to have task-based assessments was something I've been doing for the past few years with IB language, but I didn't really feel like I was super intentional about it. And this opportunity allowed me to reflect on my practice and be more intentional about the task and what it is giving to the students and what their final product is and what they're developing and actually creating. So what we're doing with my task is during the height of the Black Lives Matters movement in 2020, former President Trump said that, why do Black Lives matter when more white lives are being taken through police brutality? And what my students were given was data sets and this article where President Trump talks about that, and he's quoted in it. And, you know, I have them initially, it's kind of funny when they were like, he's lying, he's lying, he's lying. And he's not lying. More white lives were taken from police than Black people in 2020. But we were talking about proportions. So what their task was to use a data set and identify why it is a false statement for him to make. Though it is a true statement, there's mathematically speaking and proportionally speaking, it is a disproportionate to the population size of the white community and the Black community in 2020. So one of the things, what they do afterwards is they write a letter to Trump with their findings, which those letters started out very angry, I will say. We had to tame it back a little bit, but rightfully so. So it gave them an opportunity to kind of speak their mind, but also in a way that was providing evidence to back up their claims, which I know is a big thing that they're pushing in our language and literature classes, is the evidence and claims and all that kind of stuff. So students got really into this. I felt very good about it. I would say, like, as a learning curve, you know, working predominantly with Black and brown students and being a white male, it's oftentimes, I think in the past, I've always felt a little bit hesitant to speak on issues like this. Like, it wasn't my place, but I think this is the past couple of years, and through this, it has helped me realize that there is a place for this conversation, and it's super important for these kids to be talking about it, because I think a lot of the media can be false truths, false, I don't know how to call it, but you know, President Trump wasn't lying, but we have to dig deeper. We have to be our own investigators in our research and be able to apply our own critical thinking in order to form our own opinions. And I think that's going to be something that is never going away, and if anything is going to get more important in the future.
Thank you, Matt. I think, you know, I couldn't have said it better in terms of the critical thinking and going beyond just the data that we're seeing, right? And examining that in a more critical way. That totally makes sense. Anything you want to share, Karen? I noticed that you put something in the chat.
Sorry, I had to unmute. I was just thinking as Matt was talking that there is so much opinion out there without, not based in fact, and teaching students how to research it, be thoughtful about it, so that they do have a solid counter argument. It teaches them how to have discourse, public discourse. And we don't get enough good models of that. So mathematics rocks. This is a time when I think kids would see a real value in mathematics.
Yes, there's no doubt about that. And, you know, geometry, I struggled in geometry because it wasn't, it wasn't relevant. It wasn't relevant to me. And so something like this would have definitely caught my attention. I don't think Paul is on the call right now, so we'll go to the next slide. Right, anything that just stood out that you were surprised about, that you learned, that you were inspired by, that you found value in? Please share it in the chat. So Marianne said, this is also very important because it's centering students' identities by examining their own.
I think that was probably true of many of the teachers. As they worked through these projects, there was a lot of teacher self-reflection on the topics and how kids were responding. Teachers were also thinking very deeply about these topics.
Yes, indeed. Marla said math is typically skill and drill, and that's for sure, right? So trying to find ways to bring relevancy and connect students to community through math. Sometimes people find it challenging, but this is an example of how you can do it. All right, so let's go to the next slide. So I'm not sure if Irene and Cassie are on. I know Cassie was having some technical
I'm on.
difficulties. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Hi. Yeah, so I can speak to our project really quickly. We looked at it through the lens of an 11th grade US history course. I actually came up with this idea because a student came to me one day and was like, Miss Camp, did you know that in Dumbo, the crows are named Jim and they have like this Southern accent and such? So I was thinking like, wow, I never realized that. So then I like began to think like, gosh, all of these movies and TV shows that kids watch as little tykes, like meaning to be totally like harmless and what actually are quite harmful. And they're a product of the system of culture that practices oppression, and we don't even realize it at times. So that combined with another unit in US history where students critique sections of a history book and whether or not they tell a full story, we thought maybe we could put those two together. So it's for a unit that we called Good Trouble because we love John Lewis and we want to pay tribute to him. And so the students on their own would create 2 different final products, and the entire unit would be practicing a variety of different skills that would be displayed in the final products, along with like constant self-reflection of how they see themselves in these stories or how they feel the impact of these events on a daily basis, where then some students may acknowledge, man, I don't feel this at all. There's an inequity here. So the first final product, students would create an entertainment disclaimer. So through their own research and inquiry and like students bringing resources to class and whatnot, they would provide a disclaimer for a source of entertainment or cartoon or something such as that to explain like how this is a product of the culture of power and how this is either a form of oppression or a result of oppression. And then the second piece is we want Disney too to create our own history textbooks. So students, while we're learning about different civil rights movements and things such as that, would write their own excerpt of a textbook, taking a look at any type of fighting a form of oppression that they so choose. So it could be ableism, sexism, of course, racism, etc. So they might choose individuals such as like, I don't know, like Madonna Thunderhawk or John Lewis, Dolores Huertas, Harvey Milk, or they might choose an actual movement or event to formally write about. And so rather than, you know, allowing for our students to read through a silly little excerpt of a textbook that is kind of whitewashed or glossed over, we're really going to take a look at the true events throughout history that helped make the society better. Do we have long ways to go? Yes, but we want to hopefully with the bad show the good and the perseverance and grit that all these fellow people in our country of the project with those two final products.
I'm thinking I wish my social studies classes in high school were more like this. I'd be a lot smarter today.
I'm thinking the
I
same.
just appreciate not having to lecture for 100 minutes.
But this is so cool that students will be able to create their own Disney 2 American history textbook. Right? That is definitely relevancy, that is connecting to the work. That is exciting. All right, so if you have any thoughts, feelings, please feel free to add them in the chat. We're gonna go to Melissa or Mel from Lindblom.
Hello, everybody. There it is. Okay, so this kind of came up, I put it in my document, but this sort of came up organically. Can you hear me? I don't know if I'm like cutting in or out or not.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Are we
Good.
okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So my dimensions class, my sculpture class was working on a like a hexagonal painting puzzle, and one of my inclusion cluster students made this really cute painting of an under the sea scene, and he had gotten done early, and I was like, okay, why don't you draw one of your creatures on butcher paper? And then like the students at his table ended up stuffing that like and making this huge almost pinata like rainbow fish. And then we all were like, wait a minute, like SEL just inspired this like new piece of art. We should all make one. So then we all just started to make these like under the sea creatures. And then we made paintings and we made face and holes. And then we had this huge art show, and our Best Buddies band and choir performed. And we really like, the goal was to really put the inclusion students at the forefront of this whole event, and then include the whole school. So on Wednesdays, we have like specialty days called colloquium days. And so we had a whole art show opening event kind of festival inspired by SEL, our student. And so this was like, it's been new all year in our role. The cluster students are sort of, I don't know, not included. So we were like, how can we make the cluster students more of an integral part of our like school culture? And so a lot of good feedback from their show came from our opening. Like they created a whole vibe in the back alley. Like the whole alley looked like the ocean. They invited students to make art with them that day. They invited them to see them perform. And the kids were like, wow, like we don't even know these kids, you know? The general population doesn't necessarily even know these kids. And they were so excited to meet them and see their artwork. I think like enrollment for Best Buddies band went up a little bit. The cluster students were invited to go and observe and participate in some science labs. And it was cool. I'm not sure if this was like the best project to pick for all the PB documents, but I was like, no, this was so good. I have to share it. Yeah, that's that quick little explanation.
Thank you, Mel. Appreciate it. And I would say this was a very good performance task to share. And also we'll add that Mel was a part of Cohort 1 and came back to design or make some tweaks to a performance test that she rolled out this year.
Yeah, and then I kind of revamped my PIs, my performance indicators for the assessment on this one. And I had everybody fill out icons. Like we talked about communication disorders, and everybody made an icon that represented this show, the feelings about the event. And then they had to respond by using the icons that the students have access to. So it was like, we have to step into the shoes of the cluster kids throughout the whole project, even the assessment at the end, which I thought was super valuable.
Very much so. Casey said he loved how this was student created, right? And that you kind of learned from and took from students as creating a performance test. I feel like that's the next level of our creation of performance tests, having it be totally informed by students or co-created by students. This is really exciting. And you were able to bring it to life with your particular task.
Thanks.
You know, I just want to respond. Marianne said she liked the generative nature of this. And that was a piece that we tried to stress right from the start, that it didn't all have to be formulated with the teacher making all the decisions, that as you engage students, you give them responsibility, you give them roles, you allow them to make some decisions about the direction of their own learning. And so that's what makes these performance assessments so diverse and so powerful and meaningful for the students who were engaged in them.
Yeah, it sort of felt like flying by the seat of our pants a bit. But we we took a minute to reflect on it and go bring other classes to it. And we slowed it down at the end.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mel. All right, we'll pass it on to Michael Shores from Brooks.
Hello. Yeah, as you guys are kind of reading my slide, I can kind of talk about my feelings about my journey in PBA, and I could kind of relate to what Matt was talking about, because I also teach math, and this PBA takes place in a pre-calculus / calculus class, and I could kind of speak to some other challenges in terms of tackling social justice issues in a math course. And, one for me was, this constant pressure about making sure whatever we teach is tightly, aligned to our curriculum. And I'm speaking in particular to SAT, because it seems like everything that we teach is somehow publicly assessed, so we're always kind of in the spotlight. And that kind of, over the years, it puts a lot of pressure on you. And when it comes up with, trying to do something more meaningful and engaging that, the students can really connect with, sometimes we kind of shy away from it and kind of just stick to kind of teaching the individual skills, just skills kind of based learning, this, drill and skills and drills. So I really, I really appreciate that about the PBA, and about how it really adds some meaning into what the students are learning. And the really cool thing about it is because we just focus so much on just teaching these individual skills that don't really have a purpose unless you apply them. So PBA is the perfect venue for that, for applying these valuable skills. And the cool thing about it, because I revamped this from a project I did, the cool thing is you really see a lot of holes, in terms of learning gaps that students have when they're kind of forced to or encouraged to apply it to do something meaningful like this. So that's one thing I really appreciate it. And a lot of times we don't see these holes and gaps in learning until they get into more advanced topics like calculus or statistics and physics. Those are all applied math fields that, so I really, want to kind of, journey more with this PBA, and definitely think it's a valuable tool, even also for our younger students there. I had some slides. I didn't want to add them to the deck because I'm not very creative and I didn't want to ruin your deck there. So can I share my slides or? Okay, let's see if I remember. All right, I'm a little out of practice with the, all right. All right, can you guys see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yeah, and I'm just, the reason I wanted to kind of go to my slides, because I'm more of a visual type learner, so I thought it'd be a little easier if you kind of saw what I was kind of referring to. And so with this idea of, having this anxiety about making sure, that the content was really aligned to it, I kind of started there. Now, when I introduce this to a class, I don't start here. I don't actually start with the math content. But just to give you an idea, I'm going to start with the academic goal because that was the part that was stressing me out about the most. And so this PBA is kind of designed to teach students to create scatter plots and also develop, it's called the regression models. And regression models are used to kind of create a correlation between two sets of data. And you can kind of see some examples of, some products that, students would be producing during this. And these are just the different functions that we kind of learn. These are polynomials, logistics, trigonometric, and exponential. So this is what, so the purpose of using the PBA is that as a teaching tool to create these linear regression models, which is also another form of statistics. So the way that the PBA is presented to the students is that the students have to choose an issue in their neighborhood or in their community, that they want to address, that they feel is having a negative impact on the community. And so when I've kind of run through this before, here's some kind of the common issues that came up, and which I thought was cool, is it's not just, it kind of moved away from the local neighborhood and not just about, some students went beyond kind of just like food deserts or, say for instance, like health issues and also infrastructure, but also students were connecting with, thinking about going to college and about college tuition and looking at disparities there. And also cool, I thought I saw one group they worked on, school funding, and they looked at, the amount of dollars that different schools got and looked at the injustices there too. So I thought it was really cool because it was very open, and I didn't want to kind of limit it all. And I just wanted them to pick something that they were really kind of would get involved with and would be interested in researching. And so the main idea was that in groups that they would work on, an issue in their neighborhood. And the product was to produce a speech and a flyer. And so the idea would be is that they would want to heighten the awareness of this issue in their neighborhood. So they would prepare a speech to, either, and the audiences, when we did it, their classmates were kind of, this is the draft and the practice. And before that, this was before COVID, we had like a STEM expo where the whole school attended, and they brought it out to a bigger audience. So the idea is if you want to, address an issue, you would have to create like a speech, and then you'd want to give them like a flyer to take home with them there. And so that's where on the flyer, where they would have to, and in their speech, they'd have to use linear regression models to kind of support their claims. So they can't just say, yeah, it's an issue. They have to prove that it's an issue. And that's what, they use the statistics and the math to do that. And just a quick note there about just some, competency-based learning highlights to it. We continue to have weekly and daily and weekly formatives where students would get feedback on how they were doing. And also, tracking their progress throughout the PBA, and also important about, you know, students and student feedback. It was really cool, like during the drafts, when students were kind of, you know, presenting to each other, they offered a lot of feedback to each other, and one of the conditions were that they had to incorporate some of that feedback into their finished product. So I thought that was really cool. The other students really got into it also. Yeah, and just the, you know, the individual reflection at the end. But yeah, hopefully I didn't take up too much time there. But
Love
I
it,
thought
Michael.
was easier. But
Not a problem. Not a problem. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate you going in depth with that. And because as you mentioned, and I think we talked about it a little bit earlier with Matt's focus, that a lot of times when we talk about math and trying to infuse social justice, right, in math curriculum becomes like an issue for some teachers. It's a hurdle. It's an obstacle, right? And you were able to find a way to do so, and provide multiple different choices, options for students to be able to think about a social justice issue.
You know, I think of all the students who say, why do we have to learn this? They had a reason to learn the statistics. It's just so powerful to see how the learning can be applied. We talk about transferred to something that you're passionate about, and deepen your understanding. So it's great. Hey, if a calculus teacher can do this, anybody can do this, right?
Definitely. All right. So what were you pleasantly surprised about? I'm not going to go over all the prompts, but you know them by now. Please add them in the chat, right? Anything that resonated with you. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. All right, so I'm going to pass it to Diana Guzman Morales. Diana was a part of the first cohort and the second cohort as well, with Mel. And so she's from Juarez, and I'll pass it on to her.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So pretty much what my performance-based task, we pretty much worked on, or the intent was to learn a little bit more about Chicano culture. So I'm an English teacher at Benito Juarez Community Academy, and one of the things that we've been trying to be more mindful of is creating a more diverse curriculum, not just incorporating, Latina authors or Black African American authors, being a little bit more intentional with why it is that we're presenting this information in front of our students. So we decided to focus on this idea of social movements within the Latina community, especially considering that Benito Juarez came to fruition based out of a social movement that moms here at Pilsen decided to pursue or try to put together or create a school for students here in Pilsen. So that was pretty much what we wanted to do. One of the expectations for our students were we were kind of creating a more like college-like atmosphere. That was like the end goal. So having classroom discussions after having read specific literature or interacting with documentaries, art, like different types of court documents, to understand like how intricate the Chicane move or the Latino movement has been, specifically within here, the U.S. So the end goal or the end project was to create a zine where students were able to create or find 5 different instances in the Latina or the Chicanx movement, and then attach personal experiences with education that students have had and create one big zine. So one of this kind of how I wrote on the slide, one of the strengths that I thought of this zine was that I've been working at Juarez for about 4 years now. And one of the biggest critiques that I hear from my students is that they never really feel reflected in the curriculum. So I think that this is one of the first years that I actually took specifically relating to English. So one of the years that I actually took what they've been wanting to learn, and I did my best to incorporate it into the upcoming curriculum for next year.
Thank you, Deanna. Love the fact that you were able to work with a colleague on this. And that's one of the things that we had suggested and encouraged teachers to do in this process. If you could bring in a colleague from your school or even work across schools, that would be wonderful. But being able to do this, right, with another colleague who is invested in this particular performance-based assessment as well, that's extremely valuable. Okay, so Rachel is our last presenter, but Rachel wasn't able to make it because Rachel is dealing with some personal health issues related to COVID. I'll just share that. But Rachel did a very, very interesting performance-based assessment on bullfighting. I'll give you a chance to just peruse what she shared.
I hope you especially read her reflection too. She started out pretty skeptical.
She did start out pretty skeptical. But she's a Spanish teacher who leveraged this opportunity to think through how students could examine Spanish culture and think about bullfighting in multiple different ways, right? Is it moral, amoral? Is it art? What makes it art? Is it something that we should continue to do, right? And I think that is, that level of critical thinking is really important as we examine different cultures and get a sense of why people do what they do, why it's important to them, why it is a tradition. All right. So we can move to the next slide. I know we went over a little bit, 10 minutes, but that's not too bad. First and foremost, I think before we sign off, I want to give a big round of applause. You can come off of mute, right? And clap for these amazing educators that not only created performance assessments, but then went through the process of sharing them with you, right? Sharing them amongst each other, because in some cases they weren't even aware of some of the other projects that their colleagues were working on, right? So to get a chance to hear them and to share and to give positive feedback, we have critical friends that also gave critical feedback to get to this particular point, but it's wonderful that we were able to come together as a community to learn together and support each other in this particular process, and the people are actually walking away with something that they can utilize within their classroom. So thank you. We appreciate you attending, being here to support the work that is happening in Chicago Public Schools with EdSystems, with NIU, with Karen Hess, and like I said, the wonderful teachers that created these performance-based assessments.